Churning out content and crossing your fingers it works? Ha! Stop doing that stuff. Today's content landscape demands direction. If your team is stuck producing post after post with little to show for it, this episode is for you. I'm joined by marketing strategist Kendra Losee, host of the brand new, just about ready to be published podcast Marketing for People Like Us, and founder of Fueled Marketing, who helps businesses move beyond the chaos of creation and into strategy that actually drives results, meaning sales, right? We'll talk about what to stop doing, how to build content that aligns with real goals, and why mindset is just as important as messaging. If you're ready to move from content overwhelm to intentional impact, stay tuned. This is Strategy Talks. I'll be right back.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Now here's your host, Morin-van.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another live episode, Season 5 of Strategy Talks, Episode 4. Wow. If you're listening to Strategy Talks as a podcast on a replay, I want to welcome you. But if you're here live right now on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or on Facebook, I want to know that you're here. Put in the comments, say hello to myself and to Kendra. And if you have questions, be sure to ask them, because we'd be happy to answer them live, because we are live on Tuesday night. So very excited to introduce to you my friend Kendra. Kendra, how are you?
I'm great. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, we were talking a while back to find out how long have you and I known each other? 2017? It's been a while, right?
Yeah, 2017.
Yeah.
Almost 10 years.
I know. Oh,
Weird.
wow. No, don't say that.
Like, it's so weird how time works.
Oh, wow. So we are talking about content creation to content direction. And to frame this conversation, you and I were talking in the green room. And one of the things that we want to talk about is, creating a content strategy that goes beyond, well, this is the content we're going to create, because it all needs to go together. And the first question I ask when I do a content strategy, or actually a social media strategy, marketing strategy, I start with this question: what are your business goals? And you and I talked about this. You do the same thing. Mm-hmm. What do you find when you ask that specific question to a client, a new client that you're working with? What are your business goals? Are they surprised you need to know? Like, what's the conversation that you have when you ask that question?
That's a really good question. I think it goes two ways. One is they're surprised. They're like, well, we have goals, And the other is that it becomes like, oh, we want this many followers, or we want this many downloads, or we want this, or we want, viral videos, which aren't business goals. Those are marketing goals.
Right. So what kind of business goals are you looking for or if you have to guide them? Because literally what I do is I have a list written down of business type goals. And I'm like, any of these? Is this what you want to accomplish? What are some business goals that you might feed them to see if that's something that they want?
You mean the choose your own adventure approach?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's, it really depends on, a lot of times it's revenue, profitability. It's looking at if they need new hires, or what, who are they working with? Are they launching new offers or new services or products that year? Like, what are the things they want to do throughout the year? And it's very specific to the type of business. I primarily work with service businesses, and I've worked in higher education a lot, and I have a couple of clients that are like preschools, and so that's more of like a butts and seats type of goals at the very base level, but it really depends on what they're looking for, what kind of growth, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to stop the bleeding? Or are they trying to, like pivot? Any of those things.
Right. So for somebody who's listening, business owner, how will you tie those business goals to the content that you're creating? Because I think this is where, content direction is so important, but this is like there seems to be a disconnect.
Mhm.
And I'm just calling it out, especially with business owners. With they're going to a conference, they're buying a new service vehicle, they hire 3 new staff, they are speaking at a conference, they're getting a new product, maybe they're you talk about service, maybe they have a new partnership as a vendor. They forget to tell you, the marketer, right? So how does that impact what your content strategy is when they don't tell you that?
So I think that there's a couple different questions in that. One is, and I used to actually drive my students crazy when I would teach this when I was at the university, because you have your business goals and then you have your marketing goals, and the marketing goals ladder up to your business goals. And within your marketing goals, you might have platform specific goals, right? So all of a sudden you have this like ladder of goals, but they all stay aligned, and you can automatically see whatever recommendations in your strategy is going to your business goal. And I find for smaller businesses that actually even helps more, because there's a certain point where you've created so much content and you're like, why am I doing this? And if you don't know what goal you have that ties to it, it automatically, like, it's easy to push it to the side.
Mm.
So that's one part of
Yeah.
what I've seen. The second part is, it really, I have clients that are like, we just want you to handle it. Just handle it. You know how to talk about it like us and our voice. You know how to do it. You and your team have it covered. But the
Mhm.
problem is that all of a sudden it's been like 3 months and they were like, I don't know what's going on with the business. Like, you have to talk to me. Like, I can look at the data, I can look and see what things are looking at, but my gut feel doesn't tell me what the rest of the data points are. I don't know if you're getting more inquiries. I don't know if what that looks like. So it really is treating content creation and that marketing function as really part of your business, and not something that you just like outsource or hand to your intern, or, oh, this person's creating content for me, so they've got it covered. You do need to have those checkpoints regularly, whether it's, monthly, quarterly, weekly, whatever it is that cadence needs to be.
Yeah. No, that makes
Without it.
sense. That actually was gonna be my next question is, many teams equate that strategy with like a long annual plan.
Right.
But, you were just saying now, like, execution fails when plans aren't rooted in reality and aren't updated regularly. The way I explain it to my clients is the strategy might stay for the year. And this is our, as you said, your ladder of goals, but the tactics will change based on all the things that you're doing.
Mhm,
So how
mhm.
do you advise leaders to, design like a living, iterative content direction like system to adjust with the market signals, like the market, what's happening in the market, but also what's happening in their business?
I'm so glad you asked, and I can tell you that I've been doing this for a really long time, so I'm gonna throw out some years here. In 2009, I was asked to build a 5-year social media strategy for a university. There was no Instagram. There was no, like, when you think about what was around in 2009 and you expect this to last for 5 years, are you kidding me? So it was a lesson in putting together a really solid foundation that allows for that testing, that allows for that new things to come in. So it's basically like, okay, for I'm just gonna throw out some percentages. So, like, your strategy might be in place as the foundation, and it's gonna stick 80% if you do it right for the year, right? That 20, let's say 70 to 80%, that 20 to 30% becomes the tactics, becomes the things that you pivot, that you change. It's very rare that I've had to go back and change a strategy based on because, the business goals changed, they acquired somebody, something happened that was pretty big, that required a big shift in the strategy. But when you look at the tactics, to your point, we don't know if, we know our positioning, we know the market, but we might not know that like the message might need some help, or this platform's not doing what we need it to do. So we have to reevaluate. And that's where your data points come in, and looking at them over time, like not week by week, but, a couple months at a time to look at where the patterns are.
Yeah. Have you ever, this is a weird question, I'm just going to throw it at you. Have you ever had a business owner, like, service business that you work with, 3 months in, 6 months in, go, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you one of my goals. Has that ever happened to you?
I forgot to tell you one of my goals. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Usually that, from my experience, and I don't know about yours, usually that has been more like a personal goal. Like I decided I wanted to speak, or I decided, the board decided that I need to be on video, something where like the goal was almost, it might've been couched for the business, but it was clearly the business owner's goal.
Yeah. Okay. That happened to me once, and that was really funny. I've also had the experience of them purposely not telling us one of the goals, which was acquisition. And so that made it really hard because the pushback was so weird constantly of the content we were creating. It just wasn't right. And not until the end of the year when they got acquired that we realized they just weren't able to tell us that goal, but that's why we were so misaligned like the whole year. It just drove us nuts. So yeah, that can happen too. So you talk about mindset, you blend mindset work with marketing strategy in practice. What's a mindset shift that helps leaders go from reactive content creation to proactive content direction?
I think that's a really good question, and there's a few different things in that. I think that one of the bigger things is treating marketing. A lot of times I see marketing is like it's grown organically, right? Like a lot of times, and tell me if you've seen this progression, right? Where it's the business owner, they're trying to do it all, whether or not they're doing marketing, well or not, they're doing the best they can, because most people aren't marketers. It's not why they started their business, but at the same time, as soon as they can, they offload content creation. Social media is usually by far the first thing offloaded, right? And what I've seen is that it tends to work in a silo at that point, which is kind of that gap that we've been talking about, right? Where when it works in a silo, it's supposed to be doing things that they say it's going to do, and things are getting posted, but because there's that gap in communication and goals, it's not as effective. And then the other piece of that is, what does that mean for the business owner or for the person in charge of revenue? It's accepting that marketing has gotten to the point where it needs to be treated like a function in the business, like you would HR, like you would accounting. So it's understanding that it's because it's representing you and how your sales team, and how, if you're doing it right and integrating it, it's representing throughout your business. You need to make sure that that's clear and that it's being led as such, not just, given to the intern or the VA or whomever. There needs to be someone with a strong hand overseeing it, like strategically.
Yeah. Another side question. We're talking about content strategy. And for a long time, I was the organic social media specialist. And I kind of rebranded myself. And this is why season 5 is content strategy, because I've started working with a couple of clients where I am the lead content marketer, and it involved more than social media content, because a good content strategy also talks about newsletters, case studies, blogs, YouTube videos, clips, maybe a live show, maybe a podcast. So when you add all of those pieces of content together, it makes sense that you need to look at the whole picture and you need to have those goals. And I think that, one of the things that I often see is that, even marketing teams, and that's happened to me, can work in silos where, the social media manager is doing this, and then there's a blog, team that might do this, or a blog editor, and then somebody's in charge of the podcast. And, that happened to me once where a client just hired somebody completely different to start a podcast and, didn't ask input from her marketing team and ended up having a good podcast. But I think it could have been a lot better because we already knew her business. So I do think that, when we talk about content strategy, if you're listening to this or watching this and you're thinking social media, it's a lot more than that. It's all those pieces working together. And that gets me to, you're starting another podcast, Kendra. I just kind of want to put that right in the middle. You and I have talked about that. Tell me, just give me like a minute. What's your new podcast about and why you're so excited about it?
This is my third podcast I've had. One was when I was focused on cannabis, and then the last one was more about mindset and personal branding. And honestly, this has been a really long time coming to create this podcast. And it's marketing for people like us. And there's so much noise and hype and honestly expectations around marketing. Whenever I hear someone, like a client will say, "Oh, I just listened to Alex Hormozy, and I just listened to this podcast, and I just saw this," and they say I can create a website in 45 minutes on my own, even though I don't have any tech background. I can launch this business in 24 hours. The Weekend Millionaire book, right? Like, but what are the expectations of those results? And when you have, like, no one markets marketing better than marketers, right? Like the hype
That's a good line.
And the expectations are so high. And these business owners who are coming in and they're trying to keep up and they're trying to do all the things, and everyone's telling them what to do, and there's a million different things. We just need to stop and ground a little bit in the foundations of, it doesn't need to be that complicated. What is the thing that's going to make the difference for your business? And how do you learn to filter out? Like, how do you make better decisions when it comes to marketing? How do you learn to filter out all of the things you don't need to focus on what's really going to help you? Because a lot of times it comes down to the decision. Rather than trying to figure out, spend all that time figuring stuff out. What are you going to do that's going to help your business grow today?
Yeah.
What can you do with marketing?
Yeah. So I'm excited. I can't wait to listen to it. And then that leads me into my next question, which is, we're at the beginning of 2026. If you're listening to this in 27 or 28, good for you. But we're in the beginning of 2026. And what's an emerging risk that organizations, businesses, service businesses like you work with, repurposing old content habits instead of designing new strategic direction models? We're so used to doing things a certain way. AI has come in big time. The marketing industry is upside down. There's so many people out of jobs, yet there's so much content to be created. Humans are still needed to direct the AI to make people sound human. There is just so much going on. So what do you see happening this year in that regard as of, a new type of system? What are you using, and how would you recommend people set up a content system that works for the modern age, AI type, AI, the year of AI, I guess.
The year of AI.
Year 3 of AI.
That's a really good, I keep saying that. One of the things that I think is, it's very clear that AI is here, and how we use it, I think, is really critical. And, by the end of last year, I had, for example, created a bot for each of my clients to help with their tone, to get their content 75% of the way there, and then polish it up the rest. I know not everyone agrees with that. I'm more excited about being able to use AI and automation to streamline some of the manual tasks that need to be created. I mean, I have a client that's content and they need to prove everything, and they're plus the project management tool. And I was like, okay, no more copy and pasting. What can we do to streamline and find the tools to help automate these tasks and keep the content, spend less time there and put more time on the content, more time making it personal, more time creating opportunities for connection and community, and more time really strengthening your unique lens and like how you frame your point of view in order to make that stronger to stand out.
That's good. Yeah. So I did the same thing. I have some bots for some of my clients to help me with recurring tasks and to help get some of the content written. Like you said, 75% or so there. And then, you edit, you add things, and that really makes a difference. So let's talk about measuring things. So how do you help a team, a business owner, or marketing team measure the value of strategic content beyond like the vanity metrics? Oh, this content brought in 600 million, video views. So direction becomes tied to outcome like leads and pipeline, because here's something that especially business owners are confused about especially when I was doing social media. So there's, business strategy, marketing strategy, and then social media strategy. And I was usually hired for social media strategy, but yet they wanted to see the big things happen. And so I would tell people, I'm guaranteed to do the work. I am guaranteed for me to bring awareness. I can most likely, and I will say yes to bringing you leads, but I'm not bringing you the sales. That's the sales team. So how do you have this conversation? And do you ever straddle that line between marketing and sales? Are you on calls with the sales team? Is your strategy convey to sales? Do you have weekly meetings? I'm curious.
It depends on the size of the company. I'm laughing because this topic is so key. And I have a client that like he's the VP of sales at a company, and I've worked with him now for as long as I've had my business. He was my second client, and for the first year, every time he saw me, he'd be like, "What's my ROI?" And it was very much like, it's hard to explain an ROI to somebody when emails can't be sent because your list is a mess. So now we've got to go in and clean up. Like there's so many things there that setting the expectations up front. Sometimes like, I didn't know your email was a mess until you get into it. So I find that it's a lot easier to have that clear communication with sales, because then one, you're communicating when there's campaigns. Two, it helps them understand the positioning, so that way their messaging can be on point, and aligned. And then three, when you start to look at marketing, and I've seen this from the agency side and from in-house, right? Like working at the brands and the companies, you cannot guarantee that a lead becomes a sale. You can only get it so far, and then you can get that assuming sales does their reporting, which is a huge assumption. No offense to salespeople, we love you. It's a reality. You can pull that information in and see where the best leads are coming from.
Right.
When I worked at, and I'm going to go back to the university because I was there for a really long time. My role was marketing for the university, but it also became, for a while, the trainers of all of the recruiters, like the student recruiters, reported to me. So that way we could keep the training for the sales team aligned under marketing. And it was one of the best things that we did, because I got a chance to really work with them to make sure that they were getting the right training. So even though sales didn't report to me, I was able to work with the people training them.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I think it's important because for sales and marketing talk often. I mean, I've had several people on as guests, especially in 2024. I had 2 people that talked about, sales and marketing alignment. And I'm currently have a client that we have a sales marketing huddle 3 times a week
Mhm.
where,
Mhm.
this is what we're working on. And if you're watching this, if you're listening to this, I think one of the most important things to do is to look at what moves the needle. What
Yep.
has marketing done that's brought in a lead or two? And then, at the end of the year, of course you want to evaluate every month and, but then you set expectations for the following year. So if we did, one newsletter every 2 weeks and it brought in these very direct leads and, people pushed a button and they had a meeting with us and we qualified them and they went to sales. And so maybe we want to do a weekly newsletter, right? So it's like looking at what works, but if you don't have the data,
Right.
you can't make these decisions. And I think that's another thing with social media. For the longest time, people, at least businesses that I worked with, they had a hard time gathering all their data. I mean, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I would get a potential client and they wouldn't own their Google Analytics, or they didn't have
Right.
access to their website, or
Yep.
that, and so that doesn't really happen anymore. I think nowadays, I think that's not. But even you inherit a client and they don't own their own Facebook ad account, their Meta business account. So it's important that businesses understand that that is their data and that they should hire somebody to help them analyze their data, but that they can work off their content strategy based on the data and move forward. And I just, it's frustrating to see when people don't use the data.
The data is so important and it's often so overlooked. Like I was saying, if you don't have the full circle, right? Like once
Yeah.
again, we can get the leads in and we can think they're amazing. But if they're not, we need to know, because that lead source isn't going to be as effective or something we can do to make it even better. And the other thing that I absolutely, from a marketing perspective, think is so important is the seasonality. Because if you don't have the data to know what to expect, business owners typically will know, oh yeah, this month's really busy or this month's slow, but what does that mean? And what does that mean beyond you? Right? Like if everyone's in their silo and saying this month's really busy or this month we know is just going to be slow, what can you do? Is that where if you need to rely on, like I've worked with clients where we ran ads during the slow months, because it's one of those things where we ran, with ads coming in, it helped prop up some of the things we needed during those slower months. And it
Yeah.
gave us the chance to prepare and then, be smarter, right? Like, okay, well, if we know it's going to be slow, let's talk about what the things are that, like, let's make it more topical. Let's change it around. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a question from Gabe. He says, is this live? Yes, Gabe, we are
It is
live
live. Hey, Gabe.
right now. So I just wanted to say hi to Gabe. One of the questions that I ask during the intake process of a new client when we're going to do a strategy is, what is a life cycle that brings people into your business? I mean, you just talked about seasonality. And I just did it again a couple months ago. I did a strategy and they're like, there's no life cycle. I'm like, like if you're a service business and maybe you sell houses, maybe it's because people get a divorce. That's a life cycle thing that happens in their life, right? Maybe somebody hits 65 and they retire. Maybe they have a baby. Maybe, they graduated college, depending on what you offer as a service or a business. But I think that's between seasonality and between the life cycle. I think those are really important distinctions to think about to prepare your content. And that's why it's so important to look ahead to the year that's to come, to look ahead of, these are the events that are coming. This is I used to live in Myrtle Beach and I would get inquiries starting January 1st. I had to get everything done by April 1st because in May, the tourists would come, bike week, and then summer tourists. The business owners had no time to meet with me between May 1st and the end of the summer.
Yeah.
So it was very much a life cycle of they all would network January, February, March, April, and then they would just work in their business. So if you know that makes a huge difference.
I want to add one more thing, because when you said life cycle, I wasn't actually thinking the life cycle of the client or the customer. I was actually thinking the life cycle, like how long it takes for how big of a decision are you asking and how much of an investment is it, right? Like, is it
Yeah.
a service offering or a product where it's like a quick purchase and done? Or is it something where, like a house, where they might want to look at a bunch of different ones and like it's going to take a while? So what's the average cycle of from a time a lead comes in as well to close? Because that's something else that affects seasonality. Like if your leads come in, I have a client right now who's an architect, and they get a huge rush at the end of the year because everyone is like home. I'm in San Diego. Everyone's home thinking about their house and what they can do and wanting to get stuff done before summer hits. Same kind of thing. So what can they do to get started? And so they know that those months are incredibly busy, but also it's not a quick turnaround time from the time the lead comes in. It takes them a while. So it's not just as a business owner understanding that piece, but also from a marketing and content standpoint, if you know something's going to take somebody a while to make a decision on, what content do they need? What is going to help reinforce that you can provide to them?
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, we're way beyond, well, not way, but we're beyond 30 minutes, but I have another question. So let's just do that. Let's have that question and then we'll wrap it up. So talking about founders, business owners, they feel like they should create content, maybe because marketers like us tell them we want their thought leadership. How do you guide them to distinguish work that builds the business from work that just fills space? Because I think that when we tell them just post to LinkedIn, they're going to be like, I don't like LinkedIn, and that's why I hired you. But so how do we guide them to, first of all, to understand that they have that thought leadership and there's a space for them? And is there a process that you use to get them to do that?
You know, this goes back to the question earlier about mindset, because a lot of business owners have a belief that, one, they don't want to. I don't want to. I don't like it. I don't like marketing. I don't like social media. I don't want to be just another fill in the blank. And I hear this from so many business owners. And I think it really depends on it goes back to their goals. It goes back to their goals, their audience, and their business structure. Not everyone needs to be the face of their business, right? But enough of them do. And so it's helping them break that down and understand and tying it back to your business goals. And so helping the why, it's making the value, you know what it is? It's making the value greater than their fear.
Oh, love that. That's a great way to end this. Wow, this was a great episode. Kendra, I love it. This is like my jams, talking about content creation, content strategy. This was awesome. If somebody else is watching this, listening to this, I know they'll be downloading this as a podcast. Where can they find you? Where are you most active on social media?
LinkedIn.
Okay.
LinkedIn. And that's my goal for 20.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to make sure
on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I'm going to make sure that your link to your profile is in the show notes. So if you're listening to this and you want to connect with Kendra, you want to know more about her journey. Yes, you were so active in the cannabis marketing industry for a long time, written up in all kinds of places like Forbes and, all kinds of good stuff. So if you've heard her name before, yes, that's the same Kendra. You're an author, correct?
Yeah. My book's right there. Digital Etiquette for Dummies.
Yeah.
Also in the Washington Post, interviewed for that a few times.
I love it. I love it. So connect with Kendra. Kendra, thank you so much for being with me tonight as a guest live on Strategy Talks. Yes, they're all live. 2026, every single episode's going to be live, guys. So in case you haven't figured it out, this is episode 4. Yes, we are live. So I'm very excited about that. Kendra, thank you so much for being with me tonight. To all of those of you who were here live or will be watching the replay, or those of you who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast, thank you so much for staying all the way to the end. And next week, I'll be back with another live episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.